I want to read you a quote from Kathleen Donohoe's short essay on missing people. In the early 1980s, pictures of missing children began appearing on the backs of milk cartons. The information was scant: hometown, height, weight, birthday, and the date the child disappeared. The photographs were close-ups, grainy and dark. Looking back, it's easy to see them not as formal school photos or candid shots, but rather as pictures taken in the purgatory, where the long missing wait. The in-between. A nowhere place. A tattered poster stapled to a telephone pole, but instead of missing, it says, "This is where I am." Today's episode, the nowhere place. Where people go missing, yes, but what about the people who were born there? That is to say, the people who may have never existed at all. Join me for 6 stories. A big thanks to James Davies for this suggestion, and welcome to Nothing is Revealed. I want to cover the full gamut of the nowhere place. That means missing people, those that were eventually found and those that weren't, dooming us to a lifetime of speculation and even conspiracy. There's a fascinating opposite side to this coin. People who entered our minds and hearts and collective culture, but might not have existed at all. At least, not how we thought. Their identities are blurry. They walk through life with one foot in our world and the other in the nowhere place. Let's start with the missing. Perhaps my favorite case. What happened to the cult 80s singer Q Lazarus? If you frequent unsolved mystery communities, you might already know this one. For the uninitiated, Q Lazarus was a local band in 80s New York City. Their captivating lead singer, Q, was moonlighting as a taxi driver. By chance one night, she picked up prominent film director Jonathan Demme. Figuring he was in show business, she played him some of her songs, including Goodbye Horses. This particular song, it's just one of those songs, man. One that feels otherworldly and timeless and new and old all at once. And it captivated Demme. He loved it so much, he used it in Married to the Mob and Silence of the Lambs. After that initial hit, Q just disappeared, vanished from the spotlight. No one even knew her real name or identity. Still, mystery communities on Reddit leapt on the case, filling threads with speculation. Journalists, too, interviewed her old band members, friends, record label folks. All of them had theories, but no one definitively knew where Q went. People began to think the worst, that she died in obscurity, explaining why she had no online presence in the 2010s. Then, a breakthrough. A mysterious Twitter account claiming to be her. Her real name was Diane Lucky. The account even DM'd a few of the interested journalists, saying she was alive and providing a phone number and address. Diane claimed she'd simply faded into the hum of the city, had become a bus driver and had been one for years. Q didn't want to sing anymore. But was this just elaborate catfishing? Everything provided from the Twitter account could be found online, after all, through searches for the name Diane Lucky, all but that address. Journalists from Dazed went there twice, with no luck. No Diane, no Q. Until a picture on Facebook belonging to a family member of Diane Lucky. It appeared to be of the elusive Q, and near the provided address. Perhaps the address was real. Dazed even got in touch with facial recognition experts, who said the chances were high that the photograph was of Q. And the story ends there. Q got the message out. She's alive, and values her own privacy. Maybe one day she'll give an interview and answer all our questions. But for now, what we know has to be enough. What about the other direction? People who started in the nowhere place and crossed over, became real. Metaphorically speaking. For you late 80s, early 90s kids who had to learn typing from school instead of RuneScape, you might remember this software. Ah, Mavis Beacon, brilliant businesswoman. Except, she doesn't exist! There is no Mavis Beacon. The woman on these covers is a model. You know, stuff like that. To get considerably darker, let's talk Ted Bundy, infamous serial killer executed in prison 30 years ago. But his twisted legacy lives on. Well, I want to talk about his literal legacy, his family. With wife Carol Ann Boone, Bundy had one daughter, Rose. Allegedly, her parentage has never been tested, and besides, she's vanished. To escape that legacy, armed with a new name, she's disappeared into the nowhere place. Willingly. Well, in 2019, a teenage girl on TikTok claimed to be Rose's daughter, or Ted Bundy's granddaughter. For the clout, of course. Potentially outing her family's decades of effort in hiding, if that isn't the most 2010 thing you've ever heard. This TikTok blew up on social media. People quickly pointed out inconsistencies between the girl's mother and Rose Bundy's birth dates. Just as the young girl took the video down and apologized. It was only a joke, a lie. Me personally, I'm still not convinced it can't be true. Rose could have gone some extra miles to acquire a new identity, and it just seems such a random claim to make. But I must say the renewed interest in Bundy as of late could be all a teen on TikTok needs. There's another who could be Rose, a British, yes, British poet called Amapola White. The evidence is a little scant, but goes like this. In mystery communities, a rumor had percolated that a Facebook page outing Rose was quickly shut down. I know, the deleted Facebook page is kinda a trope at this point, but the page claimed Rose lived in the UK and wrote under the pseudonym Amapola. The tabloid Globe leapt on this theory, outing Rose once more and again claiming she lived in the UK, though they don't mention Amapola White. And they're a freaking tabloid. Amapola's Twitter has been silent since May 17th, 2019. Links below. The reason I have a hard time discrediting these two claims, even though they're likely both false, is that they're so specific. Like, why did these two sources name these two random women? Regardless, Rose Bundy is no more. Another discarded identity. Another resident of the nowhere place. For our next two, let's get a little historic, starting with The Princes in the Tower, one of the oldest documented missing persons cases in the Western world. Funnily enough, I first heard about this real-life case from a work of fiction. The Daughter of Time, by Josephine Tay, is about a fictional detective injured and stuck in the hospital, and so he tries to solve a real historic case. This book often graces the top spots of best crime novel lists, and for good reason. So, The Real Mystery, from 1483. The Princes in the Tower refer to Edward V and Richard Shrewsbury, Duke of York. They were brothers, and the only sons of Edward IV, King of England. It's hard to fathom how much power these two young boys would inherit. Until, when they were 12 and 9 years old, their uncle, the Duke of Gloucester, lodged them in the Tower of London. This was under the guise of preparation for the boy king's coronation. Then they were never seen again. Soon after, they were declared illegitimate. Their uncle ascended the throne. What happened? It seems obvious, right? Their uncle had them killed to secure the crown for himself. However, there's just not much evidence, so historians have proposed a string of theories that they were murdered by their uncle or other power-hungry men. Or that they escaped the assassination attempt. A few years later, two claimants to the throne arose. One claimed to be Edward, one claimed to be Richard. Both were largely discredited. The former, just a child, was pardoned. The latter was imprisoned and eventually hanged. About 200 years later, under the reign of King Charles II, some workmen were remodeling the Tower of London. they dug up a box containing 2 small human skeletons. They were assumed to be the princes, placed in an urn and marked by a monument in Westminster Abbey. Well, fast forward to 1933, more than 250 years later, and the bones are removed and examined by archivists and scientists. Many of the bones were missing, but they concluded the children were the correct ages for the princes. No further scientific examination has ever been done. With today's DNA and carbon dating technology, it might reveal the truth of their identities, but not who killed them or why. So, what does the fictional detective make of this in The Daughter of Time? Just the opposite of the most popular theory. He finds no evidence that the boys' deaths would have benefited their uncle, and even questions the very claims that the boys went missing. They weren't actually reported missing in the historical record until after their uncle's death, when Henry VII was king. In fact, the detective finds King Henry to be a much likelier suspect. So why isn't he the infamous villain? Overall, the novel reminds us how tenuous our understanding of history is, that propaganda and those in power distort the truth and replace it with their own. And that once great myths and legends are constructed, they're brutally difficult to take apart. Speaking of... On the flip side, let's talk people whose identities are rock solid in our history books, but maybe shouldn't be. There are a lot of these. King Arthur, Pythagoras, but I want to talk another, the greatest writer who ever lived, William Shakespeare.
Young Will Shakespeare is having a bad year.
Who is he? Writer of nearly 50 famous plays, dozens of immortalized sonnets, born in 1564, died at age 52, but not before making art history. But who was he? I mean, literally, historically. That's a harder question. Few records of his private life have survived the centuries. People have speculated about his sexuality, his religious beliefs, even his physical appearance. But the most infamous speculation: did William Shakespeare really write all these works? It's been theorized he didn't. It was actually Francis Bacon, Christopher Marlowe, a pair of English earls, even a woman, Amelia Bassano, or someone else, someone unknown, writing under a pseudonym. Maybe more than one person. The evidence for this is simple. The real William Shakespeare was born the son of a glove maker. He wasn't well educated, wasn't old and wise, wasn't a woman. So how could he have written such compelling, wise, female characters? Yeah, not great evidence. Most serious scholars dismiss this possibility, but a small, dedicated group asking the authorship question remains. As a society, in 2020, we have a hard enough time establishing an objective truth about things that happened last week, let alone centuries ago. And so Shakespeare, as we know him today, might be more nowhere than you thought. For our final 2 cases, I leave you with warnings. Chinese actress, model, and singer Fan Bingbing is one of the highest paid entertainers in the world. She took Chinese film by storm, then went international. French and Korean films, and even Hollywood productions like X-Men. Then, in 2018, she vanished off the face of the earth. Months passed. Her social medias were silent. No one had seen her. More so than many cases, this one really whipped up the world. Theories and speculation, most of which have to do with a distrust of the Chinese government that is entirely earned. Arbitrary and secret detention is basically legal there. And Fan is not the first high-profile person to just vanish. Theories abounded. Rumors that she'd applied for political asylum in the US and was in hiding. Rumors that she partook in prostitution rings for high-level members of the Chinese Communist Party. Or that she was simply dead, never to be found. Then, 3 months later, she reappeared. She'd been charged by the Chinese government for tax evasion and secretly detained. No mystery novel plot. no theories, just regular, blue-collar crime and a government that doesn't respect its people's fundamental human rights. The lesson here is when people return from the nowhere place, there's often nothing romantic or intricate about it. It's easily explained. No conspiracies or secrets, no boogeymen. Not to say this isn't chilling. Link below for a list of people the CCP has disappeared. It's chilling in a monotonous, depressing way. We all know about it, but can do nothing to help. And finally, our second warning. This isn't about any one non-existent person. It's about an infinite number of them. Infinite, you say? How's that possible? Well, every time you visit thispersondoesnotexist.com, an AI generates the face of a person who never existed. They're not real. They weren't born here. They were born in the nowhere place. I just created 3 more. The technology here is called GAN, or Generative Adversarial Network. Don't panic, their documentation warns. Except, I am panicking. This feels like an existential crisis. Look into their faces. You can imagine them growing up, sharing in the human struggle, feeling love and pain. But they didn't, won't. For now, the AI generates their faces. Next, it'll generate their names, personalities, their voices, their minds. Playing God, not in a Dr. Frankenstein way, but one more subtle and unexpected. An uncanny army of digital nowhere people. Maybe I'm just being paranoid. Yeah, that's it. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked this episode and this nowhere place format, there are so many other cases to cover. I'd love to do more, but only if you hit that like button. And reminder, if you want to be featured in the write-in episode later this year, send me an email, a video, whatever. Tell me who you are, your favorite mysteries, anything. A righteous thanks to Joe Hunter for the thumbnail, and to the patrons. Duns Fan, Rose, SW Man 3, Regina, Darks, B Wade, Gillian Zermer, and new patron, Ben, Love and Ire Cushing. As always, I'm glad you're here.
How do you like that, eh?